There is a moment when your internal alarm stops sounding, not because the danger has passed, because your system has accepted defeat. The body gets tired of warning you. The nerves even stop arguing. Silence replaces resistance. That silence feels like progress, but it's not. It's the beginning of the end. That is the real point of no return. The moment wrong stops feeling wrong and your biology becomes complicit in the collapse. You see, most people never notice it happening. They confuse numbness with mastery, and they call adaptation strength. But what they're really celebrating is surrender. The nervous system is arranging itself around distortion because you've stayed there way too long. A trapdoor never slams shut, it dissolves choice. And by that time you reach for a way out, your body recoils like you're reaching for a flame. But you're not trapped because escape is impossible. You're trapped because escape feels violent. That is the moment we're going to talk about. The moment it becomes hard to go back. The point of no return is not a dramatic event. It's not a breakdown. It's not a single decision that ruins everything. It's more hidden, more surgical, psychologically quiet. It's a collapse of contrast. You see, early on, misalignment hurts. You'd feel the tension between your choices and your instincts. Your breath shortens when you lie to yourself. Your stomach even tightens when you avoid the truth. You feel this internal pull of an alternative direction. But over time, repetition resolves friction. If you ignore instinct long enough, the body revises the doctrine. It begins to decide, if we're still here, this must be who we are. And so wrong becomes familiar. Familiar becomes safe. And safe becomes identity. The point of no return happens when the nervous system stops trying to pull you back, not because you overcame doubt, but because you buried it under habit. When truth no longer creates tension, you're not aligned, you're gone. And from that point on, your biology works against your clarity. Your system reads honesty as a threat. Your organism rejects course correction like an infection. The point of no return is not a moment where you could change. It's a moment where you won't, because change violates the rules your body created to keep functioning. You don't lose your way, you lose your ability to feel lost. But guess what? Nothing catastrophic announces it. There's no siren and no final warning. It's one skip signal at a time. First, you override instinct. You feel something is off, but you don't say anything. You don't want disruption and you don't want discomfort. So, what are you going to do? You're going to choose silence. And then you will rationalize. You'd say something like, it's just temporary. I may be adapting and it's not that bad. But what it really means is you're negotiating against your nervous system. And the negotiation eventually turns into convenience, and convenience turns into routine. You stop asking whether it's right. You ask whether it's easier. Easier wins every single time. But human beings don't drift because they're reckless. They drift because the immediate consequences of staying put feel smaller than the immediate consequences of moving. This is how you destroy yourself while calling it stability. You stop taking inventory. You stop looking for alternatives. You even stop checking yourself against your own standards. Instead, you check yourself against endurance. I could tolerate this one more day, right? You see, tolerance masquerades as strength, but it's the beginning of sedation. A slow drift eliminates contrast. Every day you stay numb, clarity loses muscle. And every day you ignore instinct, your system weakens the circuitry around warning. Drift is hypotenuse, a transbill from a minor concession. No one recognizes when they cross the line. They recognize it only when they notice they haven't cared in a long time. That's the cost of drift. You don't notice disappearance until after you've disappeared. You see, the body is not ethical. It doesn't care what's good for you. It cares what's consistent. If you feed it stress every day, it will normalize stress. If you feed it avoidance, it will normalize avoidance. And if you starve it honesty, you will become allergic to the truth. The body doesn't aspire, it adjusts. That adjustment is not progress, it's compliance. Your nervous system is built to conserve energy. It prefers the familiar over the functional, even if the familiar is killing you. So when your physiology begins to adapt to distortion, it stops alerting you. It decides to protect the routine, not the organism. Your lungs unfortunately adjust to shallow breathing. Your jaw adjusts to clenching. Your shoulders adjust to collapse. And your sleep adjusts to unrest. And slowly, your emotional signals lose definition. Fear feels like boredom. Shame feels like fatigue. Avoidance feels like choice. And dissidence feels like nothing at all. And that's not healing. This is a system-wide corruption. The body recalibrates to dysfunction and then guards it like territory. Once your biology believes distortion is home, any attempt to leave will trigger survival mode. This is why course correction hurts. Not because change is wrong, but because change contradicts the internal treaty your body signed to keep sanity intact. You're not resisting the truth. Your body is resisting exile. At some point, your behavior stops being a detour. It becomes a definition. You're no longer someone who is misaligned. You're actually someone who operates like this. Avoidance stops being a tactic and becomes a personality trait. Comfort stops being a preference. It becomes a belief system. The internal narrative rewrites the script. I'm not avoiding. I'm selective. I'm not checked out. I'm calm. I'm not numb. I'm stable. Identity theft begins internally. You steal your own name and replace it with compromise. You no longer say, this will change. You say, this is who I am. You see, identity is the most powerful prison on earth, not because it locks doors, because it eliminates the awareness that doors exist. People don't stay stuck because they lack opportunity. They stay stuck because leaving violates the character they've built to survive. You won't abandon the identity that keeps you intact, right? Even if it's rotting. Misalignment becomes personality, and personality becomes destiny. And by the time you notice, you're defending a version of yourself that was born from malfunction. That's the danger. You stop questioning whether this is right for you. You start defending why this is right for you. You stop arguing with the environment. You argue against your own freedom. That's when you become unpursuable. Not because you're convinced, but because doubt threatens the ecosystem. When identity is built around avoidance, truth becomes treason. So check this out. Your nervous system has one important mission: protect continuity. Continuity equals safety. Safety equals survival. So once a system rewires around misalignment, anything that threatens that pattern triggers an alarm. Honesty becomes destabilizing. Responsibility becomes overwhelming. Correction becomes violence. Your body resists like you were trying to amputate a limb, because you're cutting away the adaptation that kept your psyche from fragmentation. And you ever wonder why people snap when confronted? Not because they're hiding anything from you, because they're guarding their anesthesia. You don't remove a numbing agent without pain. You don't expose a wound without consequence. If you tell the truth too quickly, the body floods with panic. If you change behavior abruptly, the nervous system interprets it as chaos. The rejection isn't emotional, it's self-governed. It's rooted in physiology, not preference. This is why course correction feels impossible. Your system treats honesty as an external threat. Your pulse spikes, your breath shortens, your hands sweat, your mind scatters into 1,000 rationalizations. That's not a fear of change. That's the body defending the architecture against distortion. You created a home in avoidance, and now your nervous system wants to keep it standing, even if it collapses on top of you. And here's a scary thing: the mind can justify basically anything if the alternative requires reconstruction. You start crafting narratives to protect the drift. You start thinking, it's not the right time. This is how everybody lives. At least I'm not suffering. These aren't lies, they're sedatives. Rationalization is not persuasion, it's chemical management. It keeps panic at bay. It protects a fragile equilibrium. It allows the body to continue operating inside distortion without triggering revolt. But rationalization has a cost. It amputates curiosity. So you stop asking, what could be better? And you start asking, how do I stay numb? You no longer look for alignment, you look for anesthesia. That's the final betrayal. You become loyal to whatever prevents contrast. Contrast is dangerous. Contrast might remind you that you've drifted way too far. Contrast might reveal the truth about your identity. So rationalization removes that mirror. It makes sure you never see what you've become. Internal narratives become a protective shield, but shields block clarity, and block clarity guarantees collapse. You don't stay because you're confident. You stay because you're chemically dosed. But there's always a cost in all this, and the cost is always delayed. Misalignment accumulates debt. Avoidance accrues interest. And by the time the bill arrives, you don't even recognize the charges. The psychological cost is erosion. It's not sudden. It's not going to be cinematic. Just a quiet disappearance of eternal range. You lose nuance. You lose sensory accuracy. You lose the ability to discriminate between tension and intuition. Everything blends into one dull emotional frequency. So you begin to mistake absence for stability. Absence of panic does not mean safety. Absence of fear does not mean alignment. Absence of doubt does not mean clarity. It means that the system has shut down non-essential functions to preserve distortion. The psychological cost is regression. So you become someone optimized for the smallest possible emotional territory. You shrink your requirements, you reduce your needs, you shave down your expectations. Not because your life has improved, because collapse has become tolerable. You don't feel alive, you feel operational. Barely. That's not functioning, that's captivity. So, what is the point of all of this? Well, it's to find out if you're living your true authentic self or living a lie. But how would you know, right? Well, let me ask you a couple of questions. If in your life, if honesty feels physically stressful, well, that's a red flag. Or you defend habits you can't even explain. Is comfort the only thing you trust? Have you stopped expecting internal contrast? Has numbness become your proof of progress? Do you confuse absence of panic with peace? If the answer is yes to any of these, you're not at risk. You're already past the point of no return. Not because you can't leave, but because you've accepted the architecture. The trap was never the circumstance. The trap was losing the ability to feel when the circumstance became unlivable.